Are you ready, Gonky?
Yes, sir.
This is from Dan, Viper Dan. There we go. Okay.
Hey, Mover. Hey, Gonky. Diesel Dan here from across the border up in the north. Kind of a two-parter for you guys. First off, in September 2022, the London, Ontario Airshore, I was able to fulfill my childhood dream of seeing a Viper in the flesh. Not only that, but I was able to see 12 that day, 6 statics and the Thunderbirds flying. The coolest part for me and one of the most memorable was that 2 of the statics were actually from the Makos. Now, they say never to meet your idols and whatnot, but I'm here to tell you that the Viper to me is like Margot Robbie for you, Mover, as one hell of a bird. My question to you is, what are some of your childhood dreams that you were able to fulfill? And the second one, just for you, Mover, is the Viper is the jet that got me interested in aviation at a young age. So I want you to take this time to reminisce about the best fighter ever made and to speak about some of your fondest memories of the jet. Thanks, guys. Stay safe. Cheers from this Canadian fella.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
That's a lot. I was going to say Margot Robbie is not a bird, but she was in Birds of Prey, so I guess she is a bird. Man, reminiscing about the Viper. Dude, what I loved about the F-16 was that it was like an Iron Man suit. And anybody will tell you that, especially those of us that needed the seat all the way down to get the fist between the the canopy, so you wouldn't hit your noggin when you tried to jump out. But you're snug, but it's not claustrophobic or anything like that. You just feel like you're wearing it. And as you get used to the sensitivity, the pressure of the stick, you start to feel like your mind is one with the aircraft. Like you will where the aircraft goes, and it just it listens to you. It knows what you're thinking, and next thing you know, you're doing that. It was awesome having almost 30,000 pounds of thrust in an aircraft that weighs about 22,000 pounds clean. I mean, dude, it would accelerate. If you were clean burner, went straight up, it would accelerate in the vertical. I mean, it was just a cool aircraft in that regard, high performance. In the same regard, especially when I flew it before ATAGs, and even ATAGs today, I mean, never underestimate that jet. It'll hurt you. It'll hurt you. It'll kill you. It's not. And it'll do it fast. I lost a friend, from that very thing, after his third set of basic fighter maneuvers, and it got tired and just got a little bit behind on his G strain. And next thing you know, it's not, he's not fighting anymore. And that was terrible, but it was a reminder to everybody across the community that it was an airplane that would bite you. And it was an airplane that you had to take seriously. I've got, the neck and back injuries from that jet to prove, how hard it is on your body. But that said, it was just an ergonomic aircraft, everything, all the sensors, when I went from the Viper to the Hornet, one of the things I noticed is like, there's so much, off push button, maybe I just didn't know how to do it right, but there was so much like pushing buttons and stuff versus the Viper where almost everything was HOTAS. Every now and then you do something in the ICP, but for the most part, you're running everything just kind of sitting in your lazy boy. So, I think the original design of that was a great aircraft. It's well more advanced than for its time. And the fact that it has lasted 40 years and they're still building Block 70s is pretty damn cool. It's still a very relevant thing. And, for me, the coolest part anytime was taking the jet cross country, because that's where I think you had alone time. You had one-on-one time where you weren't missionized, because in the Air Force, more so than the Navy, every ounce of fuel felt like it was some kind of training. Every time you took off, you were with somebody, you were doing something. We didn't do like we did in the Navy, the 1V0s and stuff like that. Very rare. Like one time I think I did in my entire career. But when you went cross country, that's where you were alone with the aircraft. And that's where you kind of figured out, what it could do. The different, you'd go into the sub modes and look at the different avionics and actually just kind of explore with just some seat time, and being able to share that with, my family. I did a static display at Acadiana. I've talked about this on like one of the first episodes we did. To me was like one of the coolest things I've done, because being able to come up initial, land, do a low approach, and then take off on the unrestricted climb when I left. That was, to me, the highlight, because my dad was always my hero. And I wanted to be him when I was a kid, he would take me to drill, and he was in the Army. And for me to be able to come back and be like, look, I'm, 25 years old. Here's the F-16, which, by the way, was after my first deployment, was pretty cool. So I think that was kind of what was awesome about it. But in general, it's a great airplane, and it's a magic carpet, man. You don't see any. There's no rails. There's you're sitting high. Everything's behind you. You're on the nose of a bullet. Gonky, what's your coolest non-Viper related story?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it. The coolest thing I've ever done is like showing my parents I made it.
Yeah.
Maybe not made it, but I'm not a total failure. And like throughout my career, there was things that happened, like when if you listen to the thing I did with Casmo, the just graduating OCS, the day of, I learned that, hey, you're medically qualified, you're going to flight school, right? My parents were there. That was awesome. When I got my wings, right? Or even before that, when I selected jets, I literally called my dad on like his emergency work phone number, like never call this number unless you're like I literally called him, and, had his boss go get him off the floor. He's a jet mechanic at an airline that's no longer with us. And, to tell him that and hear his excitement. When I got winged, my parents came out, my dad put my wings on me, and he was in the Navy in Vietnam, and, he worked on fighters in Vietnam. And then, to actually bring an airplane home, kind of like you talked about, just for them to see it. And of course, like, all the cousins, everybody comes out, right? And that's the cool thing for me. It's almost like just an opportunity to give back and to show people that, like, I wasn't a total failure. And to see my parents' reaction to that, right? They were, my mom was always like, "Oh, these pictures that fell out of my purse. My son's a jet pilot," So that for me, that was the coolest thing, is being able to do something. Because when you're a kid growing up, like, you never do anything for your parents, right? Like, it's always like take and receive mode, take and receive. It gets worse when you're in college. It seems like, even though I was working, my parents would help me, and then it was kind of the something big I could bring back to them that I knew they'd be super proud of. And my pop is, my mom is, even though I'm most likely done flying those planes today. But that's, for me, that's the coolest thing I've done.
Yeah. And, just going back to the Viper part, because he asked specifically about the F-16, I think one of the coolest things is just the feeling of pride you had flying it. I mean, I'd sit in EOR, I'd look down, I'd see 3 jets, and I'd be like, dude, I'm leading 3 jets out, pretend like we're going to war. And I'm at the tip of the spear right now. And, I think there's no sweeter words than picture clean when you're on an upgrade ride. And
Depends.
Well, right. So, it was funny because around this time, I'm one of those dudes that doesn't appreciate things as they're happening. I'm always trying to look at the next thing. And I think if I ever look back and say, hey, that's a regret, I think that's probably one of them, because you don't know that what is it? Andy Bernard says, you don't know the good times are there until they're gone. And
Cinderella said that.
I'm pretty sure Andrew Bernard said it, but okay. Michael Scott says you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But I mean, now being older, you look back and you think, you're like, dude, I was a 26-year-old, 27-year-old. The United States government trusted me with this $40-50 million aircraft. 3 other people trusted me to lead them. And then 12 other people trusted me to, run this event where they would come attack my target and I would defend it. And I briefed it, I, planned it, and then I executed it. And at the end of the day, when I say there's no better words than picture clean, because, dude, that meant you won. When the vol's over and there's no more bad guys and your target's still standing, I don't remember ever a time in my life more than flying the F-16 when I'd go to bed feeling like I did something. Like, I would sleep sound because my body was tired. my mind was tired, and I was like, I did something, you know, and it was that time in my life flying that airplane where it was just that sense of a accomplishment, even if I just did BFM, because I was like, man, I pulled 9 Gs today and I didn't die, you know, because that's you know, it's a survival thing, you know, you're doing that, and then going to combat and seeing kind of the effects that you have in real time, I think is a pretty big thing, and you don't really realize it until after the fact. You know, youth is wasted on the young. But dude, that's always going to be my first love. That jet, you know, I love flying the Hornet, but that jet will always be, you know, the one I look back and go, man, wish I could do it one more time.